What's up, everybody? Thanks for joining us. We are just about 10 hours away from the first tee time at the Travelers Championship. It's a little touch and go there for a little bit today, but yes, indeed, there will be an opening round at TPC River Highlands in the morning. I'm Jason Sobel. Peter Jennings joining me. And Peter, I think we're going to start off with not the guys who are in the field this week, but the guys who are now not in the field. Brooks Koepka, Webb Simpson, Graham McDowell, Cameron Champ, and Chase Koepka all withdrew today, either a positive test in the case of Cameron Champ or just being cautious. A couple of caddies tested positive. We've all heard the news by now. What is your take on this? And more importantly, how does it affect the betting markets? What have you seen as far as lines moving since this news came out today?
Yeah, it was a scary day. I was really worried that this event possibly could be canceled. I'm
Mm-hmm.
happy that they're continuing on. We'll see what transpires here this week and going forward. But yeah, from a betting perspective, I was bullish on Cameron Champ. Bummer to see him out of the tournament. But if you did place bets before today, especially on outrights or top fives, top tens, top 20s, you should have some nice value on those bets now because Webb and Koepka are two of the big favorites in the field, and that does impact the odds. So, you've seen someone like DeChambeau go from 13, 14 to 1 to 11 to 1. JT, I've seen all the way down at 9 or 10 to 1. Same thing with Rory, who's kind of that 12 to 1 range. Now he's pretty much 11 or 10 to 1 in the outright market. So, because those guys are out, that increases the chances for everyone else in the field, given the quality of golfer that Webb Simpson and Brooks Koepka are. So, hopefully, you made some bets before that, and there's still a lot of interesting stuff out there.
The only bet I had, Peter, that included any of those players who have withdrawn was Brooks Koepka in a head-to-head matchup over Webb Simpson. I guess last guy to leave Connecticut, I guess, wins the bet in that case. But of course, just kidding around a little bit. But how else? And what other guys in there? I mean, were you looking at Koepka? Were you looking at Webb Simpson as potential plays this week at all? Have you had to change your card, or were these guys not on your radar?
So I was interested in betting against Koepka to make the cut. I know he played amazing last week, and I'm very excited about the way he's trending. But there's still a lot of variance with Koepka, and it's not a major. So
Mm-hmm.
he was getting priced like the absolute elite golfers, and I thought there was maybe a little value in shorting Koepka. At this point in time now, I mean, Webb Simpson was certainly interesting. I probably was going to go away from him. But yeah, now that the top of the board, you have four guys that are kind of differentiated versus the rest, I think, with Rory, Rob, Bryson, and JT. And you're really high on Bryson, and I'm starting to get higher on Bryson, especially after seeing some of what we saw on Twitter. I mean, hitting drives with 198 mile an hour ball speed. He's going to be able to unleash out there. So I know you're really bullish on Bryson. He's the guy that you think will win. I'm getting pretty eager to put him in my DFS lineups.
So let's get to that top tier. And as you mentioned, I think it is a clear cut top four in Rory, Rom, JT, and Bryson. I mean, if you want to throw a Patrick Cantley in there, you want to throw Xander Schauffele in there, I can understand that, but I still have them just a little bit lower as far as the guys that we like this week. So talking about favorite outrights, I mean, you mentioned my guy right there, Bryson DeChambeau, for a few different reasons. First of all, he's played well here in the past couple of top tens in the last 2 years. And oh, by the way, Bryson is a different person than he was. He's a much bigger person than he was those last 2 years. Secondly, he just finished third and eighth at Colonial and Harbortown, two golf courses which completely neutralize the advantage that he's giving himself now, where it's really claustrophobic type golf courses. He can't go out there and just rip driver all over the place. In fact, he said last week he couldn't unleash the Kraken. Well, he'll be able to unleash the Kraken a little bit at River Highlands this week. Again, not a long golf course, but I've been to all three of these courses, and I've been to River Highlands a billion times, played the golf course, covered probably 15 different Travelers Championships there. And there are times on the golf course when you can rear back, stretch your legs, hit a driver. And Bryce knows that. He understands that. He gets where and when he can hit that driver. And I think not to be understated here, not to be overlooked, is the fact that Bryson finished third and eighth, as I mentioned, the last couple of weeks. And he had that advantage neutralized. The fact that he's not just a big boy who hits it a long way. I mean, this is not a long drive competitor. This is a guy who's a very, very good golfer and now has a very distinct advantage and can put that advantage to the test this week. So I know, as you said, Peter, you're looking at Bryson a little bit this week. What else do you like about him? And I know you're on John Rahm a little bit this week too. How come Rahm?
Yeah, so just quickly to end it on Bryson, totally agree with everything you said. He's going to gain so many more strokes off the tee when he can fully unleash it because he's still hitting it straight. And yeah, the market is telling us he is right there as the best golfer in the world, at least from a pricing perspective this week with Rory and JT. I think Rahm is in the same category as these guys. I guess if I had to pick one, I'd still take Rory as the best player in the world. But I think Rahm is in the conversation, and you're getting him at a discount relative to JT and DeChambeau. So I like the odds on Rahm. He hasn't played as well as those guys the last 2 weeks, missed the cut at the Charles Schwab, didn't have a stellar performance last week, hit the ball great, just missed a lot of putts. So I like Rahm. I think he's one of the best players in the world. We saw that before the break, and I'm just going to be buying basically a price difference versus those other guys. So it's really just, I think he's right in that same tier, and you're getting him cheaper in DFS and in the betting markets.
Yeah, my favorite outright this week is Bryson. Is Rahm your favorite outright?
Yeah.
If you have to name one guy?
On the top tier for sure, it's definitely Rahm. And probably just net. I think Rahm is my guy.
Okay. Let's get to some other guys on the list. And I kind of hate the term sleeper, Peter, because I need something to put with it. I feel like it's too subjective. Some people look at sleeper and say, okay, if it's not one of those top four guys, then my sleeper can come from the rest of the field, and I'll call Colin Morikawa my sleeper. That's not a sleeper. Some people say, okay, he's got to be at least triple digits in odds. He's got to be 100 to 1 or greater. And, I could say, well, a guy 75 to 1 can be a sleeper. So I just don't love the term sleeper because I don't think it really narrows it down. But when we get to these guys that you can call sleepers, I'm not sure Abraham Answer is a sleeper at, 33 to 1. I don't think anyone's sleeper. I don't think anyone's sleeping on him right now after he hit 65 greens in regulation at Harbor Town, which is still just astounding that he did that and didn't win the golf tournament, but playing really well. Joaquin Niemann, still kind of tough to call him a sleeper. I mean, Joaquin Niemann, last I saw Peter, 45 to 1, 40 to 1 right in there.
I've seen him in the 30s now, which, my goodness, What a talk about. I wish there was some no's, and I love Joaquin Niemann. I think he's a super talented kid. He's young, so there's a lot of upside there, but the number that you're getting on Joaquin Niemann now, if it's anywhere in that 30s to 1, I wish I could bet the no on that. I would gladly lay, 35, 40 to 1 that he doesn't win, which sounds really scary to do, but the reality is this is still a loaded field, and I just don't think that there's merit in a 30s number for Joaquin Niemann, even though
that is too low. I got him today at 45 still, so
that's way better than the rest of the market. So that's a good price.
Another guy who I love, I am all over him this week, and we'll talk more about him, but Joel Damon, again, kind of a sleeper if we're talking outrights, not necessarily a guy that we haven't seen, but this guy has top 20 finishes in 4 of his last 5 starts. I'm going to get into more Damon in a little bit, but my favorite sleeper this week is a guy I know really well. If you look over my shoulder there, over my left shoulder, there's a caddy bib from the 2018 BMW Championship. Brendan Steele is a guy that I know pretty well. In fact, I probably know him better than anybody else on tour. When Brendan Steele texts me and says, hey, you got me this week, there's a reason why. And he loves this golf course. He is as much a course horse as anybody on the PGA Tour. And what I mean by that, for those who don't necessarily pay attention to the PGA Tour on a regular basis and are wondering, like, course horse, what do you mean? He plays certain golf courses really well year after year after year. And at this one, River Highlands, he's played 9 times, has 7 top 25 finishes. Something just happens. He gets off the plane in Hartford, Connecticut, and just flips a switch and loves this golf course. So I really like him this week as a sleeper. I think you can get him at 125, 150 to 1 right now. And even if not for outrights, then top 10s, top 20s, filling out the bottom of a DFS lineup. Really like that. Peter, who else are you looking at as a sleeper? And also, what do you consider a sleeper? I mean, where are you looking when someone says sleeper to you? What does that mean?
Yeah, so a lot to unpack there. Yes. Love the Brendan Steele call. And I would emphasize, if you're going to make an outright bet, which I think there's a lot of merit, Jason just outlined the case for it, make sure you shop for the best price. In the perfect world, you have multiple books that you can bet on. And I've seen that. I've seen people price wildly different, even with steel. I'm looking here at a couple of places. There's 125 to 1 one place, and there's 175 to 1 in another. So make sure, especially on outrights and long shot stuff, you're really shopping for the best price, because books will have much different prices there. And I think that call's great along the same lines for another low-owned sleeper, and I'll get into more on the sleeper stuff. But Jamie Lovemark, his friend, we had Keegan on the podcast. We had Luke Donald on the podcast. Everyone is talking about Jamie Lovemark, who has all the talent in the world, has had some injuries and some consistency issues, but word on the street is he's playing great golf, and I don't think anyone is thinking about Jamie Lovemark. So is a pure contrarian play. I think that makes a lot of sense. And to your sleeper question, I think about it more in terms of just long odds, and then in DFS, it's finding those contrarian low-owned guys, because you're going to get a lot of leverage, especially this week. There's a millionaire maker again on DraftKings. If you can find those guys that are under 5% owned, it's a great way to gain leverage against the field if that guy does well.
Yeah, I really like Lovemark at the bottom of the lineup. He's one of these prototypical guys where it might not be this week, but at some point this year, Jamie Lovemark is going to pop, and you want to be on him earlier rather than later. You don't want to get in too late when his price drops and you say, man, I should have had him. I knew he was going to be good this year, and I just didn't get it in there in time. So I like the Lovemark play a lot. Let's move on to some matchups. There's some juicy matchups out there this week. A few that I really like. It's funny. I've got Bubba over DJ this week. More of a DJ fade than loving Bubba, because I've also got
there.
We do. Okay. There. Well, I've also got Reed over Bubba, and I really like Patrick Reed this week. I think this golf course is really tailor-made for him, where he can rip those right to left draws all over the golf course. So where are you on Bubba right now? Do you like Bubba? Don't like Bubba?
I do like Bubba quite a bit. The one downside is I think the rest of the market really likes Bubba. DFS, I expect him to be pretty popular, and in the betting markets, I mean, it's wild to see him move up from, like the 50th ranked golfer in the markets to like almost top 10. And I know he's played exceptionally well here. This is his best course history, and last week was certainly not the course for him, but it's a huge, huge move. So in general, you're trying to buy low and sell high, but I do really like him this week. And I think he's playing good golf and was undervalued just coming into last week. It's interesting. So you must really like Reed over DJ then. That's just, is that a ball shaping thing? Because DJ prefers to hit a cut, but Reed prefers to hit a draw. You think this is obviously a course where the draw is required. So
I think that has a lot to do with it. I need to go back and look at DJ. If he's played here, I don't think he's played very well. I need to go back and check that. But DJ to me is just a guy right now where he's just overvalued for what he brings to the table. I'm waiting for DJ to pop it. I don't know, maybe Memphis, where he's played well, when we get to the WGC in a month or so, 6 weeks, whatever it might be. So I think that's a place where he can play well. I don't necessarily dislike him at the majors later in the year. I just feel like a guy like DJ isn't quite motivated to go up to Connecticut and play his best golf.
Yeah, I understand that line of thinking. And, he was playing poorly during the break. We had that incredible match where he played the worst of the four guys, and, comes and misses a cut, but then he played well at RBC, but he's historically played well there. So he's a tricky one, but if you look at his long-term form, I mean, he's still one of the elite players in the game. So he's a tricky one to kind of handicap. I can see being bearish on it. I'm a little bit more bullish on him than you are, but I'm waiting last week a decent amount. And I get that it's not necessarily the best course fit, but he's played well there. So DJ, I have a little bit higher. And Patrick Reed's a really interesting one. I think in general, we've talked a little bit about this, with people at the Action Network, that Patrick Reed in general is not taken as much because a lot of people don't like Patrick Reed. And I think you can get value in the betting markets with him. And in DFS, he's almost always pretty low owned. He's very seldom like one of the chalky guys. And I think, Webb Simpson and Brooks Koepka are still in the field. He had been really low owned. Maybe his ownership goes up a little bit now, just because there's less options kind of in the high, mid to high range. But yeah, he's a compelling golfer, and you really like him.
I was going to ask you, as far as DFS is concerned, does it change ownership levels for guys who are either really well liked or really not well liked when there's no other sports to be gambled on and people are like, hey, I'm going to play some DFS. I'm not a big golf guy. What do I know about golf? Well, Phil's been my guy for 20 years. Love Phil. Patrick Reed, Bubba Watson. I don't really like those guys. I'm not going to take them. Do you think that having the novice golf fan and novice gambler getting into the mix with no other sports being played, does that increase and decrease some of the ownership levels and some of the bets that are out there and moving the lines a little bit on guys like that are a little more polarizing, either on the positive or negative side?
Yeah, it's a great point, and it's kind of the fun part about being in the DFS golf streets right now is there's so many new people that are playing DFS golf. It's the main game in town, and I think it's the most fun format for any DFS game. I think golf is just perfect. It's such a great sweat, and now we have a lot of people. There's a millionaire maker for the Travelers Championship, so that's fantastic, and you will see that in the ownership. And with Brooks and Webb Simpson being out now, it's going to be tough to get one of the top end guys really low owned. But you can definitely make hay by finding some of the players that maybe aren't as big of a name or haven't done something recently, because you have the general public more prominently involved in these contests. So, yeah, I think Patrick Reed fits that mold. And Bubba is a tough one. I think a lot of people just know Bubba's played well here. Course history is like one of the first things that people think about when they get into DFS golf. So I think Bubba's probably going to be pretty heavily owned, but he's a really interesting pick. You're hedged on him, it sounds like.
A little bit, yes. And we digress. I'm probably fading him more than I'm taking him, but I said Reed over Bubba. Your favorite matchup this week?
Yeah, there's quite a few matchups that I think are interesting. I've actually done a lot more top 5s, 10s, 20s, those type of bets. I'd say my favorite thing to do this week is short Spieth. So if you want to bet on Spieth
this week or every week?
Every week still. So, I've seen a couple matchups against Spieth. That would be the direction I would go. If I ever see Jordan, I'm going to have a lot of explaining to do. I hope for golf that he continues to play decently. Yeah. Looked strong to start last week, really faded over the weekend. But, I until I see good driving stats from Jordan, I'm going to be shorting him. I mean, I know he's a magician. I know he's an amazing putter, but it's so important with how good everyone's gotten in golf. If you're not hitting fairways, it's very tough to compete on the PGA Tour.
And I think even more so this week, TPC River Highlands is a place where you kind of need to hit fairways, and he did that a lot better when he won 3 years ago than I anticipate him doing this week. So I'm kind of with you on Spieth. Let's get to our favorite prop bet. I've got a bunch that I like. I know you just mentioned you're making a lot of top 5, top 10, top 20 bets. My favorite one, and I'm all over Joel Damon in a few different ways this week, but Joel Damon, I just mentioned a little while ago, he's got 4 top 20 finishes in his last 5 starts. The one where he didn't was last week when he was T5 going into the final round, shot a 75, very uncharacteristic, and finished way outside the top 20. Even so, I'm looking at that round as an outlier, and I don't think that's a premonition of things to come. And I think that Joel Damon is going to be a really good play. So I've got him top 20 at just over, just a little higher than 3-1 this week. Thoughts on Joel Damon and thoughts on your favorite prop bet?
Yeah, Joel Damon, you and Drew Stoltz, friend of the show, he is all over Joel Damon this week. I'm a little stung by Joel Damon. I found some really good prices on him going into Sunday in that like 18-1 range. So I had outrights going into the last day, and it was not a good Sunday for Joel Damon. But man, he has played some incredible golf. I think he's hilarious in the media rooms. And we saw I shot, a 58 during the quarantine.
At Mesa Country Club, one of his home courses, yes.
Yeah, so we know that elite golf is in there. I think that's a really, really sharp call. We talked about John Rahm off the top. I mean, any format, any prop on him, I think is really interesting. I like Brendan Steele. I was just looking at some numbers there. You can get Brendan Steele at a good price in that top 20 range. I've seen some like plus 600, plus 700 numbers. Yeah. I think those are really, really enticing. So that's where I'd look. And look, too, in some places you can see some of the line movement. They've really shifted the top end with Brooks and Webb being out, but it helps. Obviously, the guys who are longer shots to be top 10 and 20. I think there's some value in those markets. And a lot of these legal books here to being able to bet in Colorado, they have top 30 and 40 markets, and those are amazing bets. I think there's great value on the guys who are bullish on for top 30s and top 40s. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a really good point there. Top 30s and 40s. I think a lot of value on there. There are a few guys, if I want to get into that, a Harry Higgs a Bo Hostler, a Sepp Straka, guys that you're probably not too familiar with. You probably don't care a whole lot about. You're probably not invested in those guys, but for a top 40 play, I like some of those guys. So I think if you want to dig really deep and look for some decent numbers and some decent value, you can find it with guys who aren't necessarily big names and aren't necessarily even trending in the right direction, but are going to a course that they have and should like this week. Now, Peter, I want to get into some of the DFS stuff. I know you've done tremendous work at Fantasy Labs, and you want to take us through your model on Fantasy Labs this week. So I'm just going to throw it right to you and ask you, what are you seeing from this model this week, and who does the model show that it likes off the top?
Yeah, so we're going over here to the model. Hopefully that is live for you guys here on Fantasy Labs. Tons of data in here that's super helpful. We have projections in there now, ceiling and floor. You can edit your actual model to weight certain things. I think driving the golf ball is very important this week. Approach is obviously important every week. Green regulation. Those are some of the stats that I'm looking at. So I have a model here for this specific week. You got Rory at the top. And I think, we spent a little bit of time on everyone. Rory's another guy like Bryson DeChambeau who has kind of been neutered the first 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Rory's biggest advantage, he's not quite as long as Bryson, but he's uber long in general, one of the longest guys on tour, but he's so straight with that club. And being able to unleash those 300 plus bombs this week should be a huge advantage for him. And I think he's a really strong DFS play, and he's much more expensive than Rahm and JT. I mean, 400 more than JT, but I think a lot of people that are going to go up to Bryson, who's getting the media attention. I think Rory has a chance to be lower owned. He was really low owned last week.
Well, look at the projected ownership. I love looking at projected ownership on the model here, and everybody on the top of this list is showing in the mid to high teens, basically even into the 20s for Bryson. 5 to 8% owned for Rory this week. That seems like a smash play if you can put Rory in a bunch of lineups and just hope that he goes out there and has a really good week, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And you can see here in the buzz score. So our friends over at FanShare Sports, they're going out and they're collecting the data from all the podcasts and articles written around the DFS and golf industry. And you can see here, Rory has a very low buzz score. Same thing with Jon Rahm. So I like buying those guys. Your boy, and I like Bryson too, but I think the distance and just kind of the way he's changed as a human being has gotten him so much attention. Everyone is talking about him. You can see he has a perfect 10 buzz score. No one has anything bad to say about Bryson this week. So you can sort any of these columns. You can sort by projected ownership, like you said. You can sort by the buzz score. And the best thing that we have now, too, is you can upload your own projections. So you can go off ours or you can change individual projections, but you can also upload your own if you have a model or anything. And then from there, you can build lineups very quickly. It's really fun to be able to, basically build around a player pool that you have, and you can build 150 lineups in seconds on Fantasy Labs.
Going just a little bit lower on that list, there's a guy we tangentially mentioned in Abraham Answer earlier, and you kind of laughed at the thought that he could be a sleeper still, which he certainly isn't. You and I did our podcast. We recorded just about 48 hours ago on Monday evening, and I mean, we were laughing about it, saying, what's Abraham Answer going to be, 50%, 60% owned this week? The projection shows somewhere in the 17 to 20% range. Is that kind of what you expect now? Because coming off last week and just his ball striking, the fact that he was one of 6 first-round leaders after 64 here at TPC River Highlands last year, finished in a share of 8th place by the end of the week. Is Abraham Answer a guy that's is he too chalky this week, or do those numbers show that, hey, we can still get on him and still differentiate somewhere else?
Yeah, I think he's going to be higher owned than that. I think the model is the ownership stuff is looking at how he's historically been owned. And I think a lot of people, especially the DFS community and more passionate golfers, understand that what he did last week is a ton of signal. I mean, hitting that many greens, the ball striking was just world class. I mean, that was like Tiger Woods 2010 ball striking. Yeah, I don't remember someone hitting that many greens. It was unbelievable. You have some cool stats on that. So there's a ton of signal with Answer. And again, now that Webb and Koepka are out, in terms of spending the money on your DraftKings lineup, you're going to have to go somewhere. So Abraham Answer, I think his ownership goes up a decent bit. And you can see that. You can see some cool things here on Fantasy Labs. We have trends. So you can make your own trends and kind of see what's going on. You can say, okay, how do golfers do? I have at least a 2% chance of winning, and see how predictive that is for fantasy points. There's some long-term ones that have shown to be very predictive. So a lot of those are around green and regulation stats. And coming off last week, Abraham Answer is popping for a lot of people.
Yeah, recent greens and regulation, not a bad stat for Abraham Answer going ahead this week. Looking down this list, who are we looking at that could be a bargain from sort of the mid to upper tier, and who are we looking at that we're just saying, hey, the model says get away from this guy no matter what this week?
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of value kind of in this mid-tier, the Tony Finau's, Gary Woodland, Victor Hovland, who we're both high on.
Yeah,
we put him in our DFS lineup for, I believe, on the podcast. So
we did.
I think there's a lot of value in that range, especially now with Koepka and Webb Simpson being out. There, you have to spend the money, like I mentioned before. And I think some of these balanced rosters are going to be really interesting. I think a lot of people want to go stars and scrubs, which there's merit for, especially with the top names. But you're getting some great golfers in this mid-tier. You mentioned Patrick Reed earlier. I think that's a really nice way to start. You throw in Gary and Victor Hovland, you can build a balanced roster. In terms of guys that I want to fade, I'm really concerned about Shane Lowry. And we haven't talked that much about COVID and stuff, but Graham McDowell had some pretty strong comments about what was going on. And how are you handling the COVID element for your handicapping for this week with DFS and betting, Jason?
I mean, basically the 5 guys that are out. And if you're trying to guess at who might become positive, who's a little scared about it, who's not staying in the bubble, I mean, we've got enough other stuff to worry about over here with all these numbers in front of us. So I'm not sure that I can figure any of that out. So if you think a guy is, hey, I've heard rumors, I know someone who knows someone who's out on tour, and they said, this guy might have tested positive, they're going to get tested again tomorrow, then I would stay away from him. But other than that, if the guy's in the field this week and you like him, I would stick with him right now. And if you happen to succumb to a withdrawal, it's just bad luck at this point. I don't know how else you can look at it.
Right. Yeah, some names, I mean, I would say that the guy that I'm staying away from, again, I mentioned I'm short Jordan Spieth. That would be my guy. But you got some big names down here that are cheap. One guy that I had a little bit of last week that burned me is Jason Day. I know you haven't been as high on him.
No.
I get it. You're kind of buying long-term for him, but he's never been 7,500. So at some point, Jason Day is going to start doing a little bit better. He's in the same range as, Ches Reavie and Keegan. You wouldn't have thought that a couple of years ago. And no disrespect to Ches and Keegan Bradley, but Jason Day was, one of the best golfers in the world and certainly has fallen off. But at some point, we could see that form return. So there's some interesting names, and we have a packed field, and I'm pretty excited to build lineups.
On the podcast the other day, you mentioned something. You didn't call it stars and scrubs. It was something much nicer because I don't want to call any of these guys scrubs.
Oh, they're all so good. I had a better word? I should have something better than scrubs. But that's what a lot of people
stars and bars or something like that. There was another word that was better than scrubs. But in any case, let's look at the non-scrubs going a little bit lower. And if you're looking to differentiate and you're saying, hey, I like Bryson. I know everyone likes Bryson, but I really like him. And I like Answer, and I know everyone's going to take him. But I can't get him out of my lineup. And so you're looking to differentiate from a guy who's, mid to low 6,000s on DraftKings. Where are you looking this week, and who pops for you as far as value?
Yeah, so you mentioned a couple guys that I think are interesting. Harry Higgs, Seb Straka. I think you'll get both of those long. Guys popping in our models right now is Vaughn Taylor, very consistent golfer. I like him a lot. Bryce Garnett is also popping. Matthew Neesmith is popping. So there's quite a few guys. Jonathan Vegas, someone that you and I have talked a lot about on the podcast. I think at some point he's going to, win and have a really great stretch of golf.
He's a much better player than he gets valued at right now.
Exactly. So I think he's a really interesting one. You have Sebastian Munoz ranking pretty well, Ryan Moore. And a lot of these, too, you can look at the betting markets to figure out who is mispriced relative to the betting markets, because some of these guys are the same DFS price and they'll have wildly different odds. That's a pretty helpful way to understand where you can potentially get some value. But at the same time, if you do like someone who's pretty long odds, you're going to get them contrarian. So it's kind of the art of balancing the projection with the ownership.
I will give you three names kind of towards the bottom of that list that I like and some other people like. Doc Redman, ball striking was fantastic, especially the last 3 days last week. Didn't make anything, but certainly trending in the right direction. Patrick Rogers is a guy who played really well in the first round. He shot 4 under. Oh, I was on a first round leader ticket. Should have been 8 under. Yeah, I think he missed 4 putts inside 10 or 12 feet. So coulda, shoulda, would have been a little bit lower than that. And then he wound up missing the cut on Friday, but he's played well on this golf course in the past. And the guy who's played really well, Bo Hostler, was tied for second place 2 years ago. And I was on, you mentioned Sleaze earlier, Drew Stoltz. I was filling in for Colt Knost on their show, Gravy and the Sleaze, on Sirius XM PGA Tour Radio about a month ago. And we had Bo on the show as an interview guest. And I asked Bo, I said, hey, if we're going to take you somewhere, we're going to bet on you, we're going to take you in fantasy, where would be the spot? And he, without hesitation, said, TPC River Highlands, take me at the Travelers Championship. So you're not even getting that from me. You're getting that straight from Bo Hostler. He says, take him this week.
Yeah, I love that call, and we're huge fans of Bo. I think that makes a lot of sense. One other thing you can do in the model, just when you're looking at the price, there's a tab called projected plus minus. And this is really helpful for every sport. It's gained a lot of notoriety in the NBA and the great work that the Fantasy Labs NBA team does. But it works really well for golf, too. And you can see here, it's not just studs. At the top of the list is Vaughn Taylor. You have Sungjae Im, who we didn't mention once. The sentiment on him and the buzz score is really low. Sungjae just putted horrible last week. I mean, Sungjae is one of the most consistent, best golfers who won right before the quarantine. So Sungjae Im, the more I think about it, that could be a really contrarian play. But there's a lot of these cheap guys that I think make sense. I was on Bud Colley. He missed the cut last week. I like him again. Ryan Stewart. And I love your Doc Redman pick, Sobel. That's one of my favorites. And Drew Stoltz was on him too.
Yeah, Redman's been playing really well. I think he could be a sharp play this week. So much good stuff. So for you guys who maybe are just getting into golf, you haven't done a whole lot of golf DFS in the past, and you want to get into it this week because there's nothing else going on. I told Peter this. I said, I had never watched a NASCAR race until 6 weeks ago, not a full NASCAR race. I am not only betting on this stuff now, I'm yelling at Chase Elliott to go turn out Denny Hamlin on the last turn and get him out of there. I mean, I'm yelling at stuff. I'm yelling things I don't even know what I'm yelling. I don't even understand any of the terminology, but I know what happens when a car goes faster than another. And as I told you last week, Peter, at least in golf, you've never had two golfers take each other out with a crash on the 17th hole on Sunday afternoon.
That's true. You've never had that, and it's so much fun. I mean, the sweats have been incredible. We've had amazing leaderboards and great drama on Sundays. I hope we have the same this week. And again, there's a millionaire maker out there. There's $3 tournaments to win $100,000. I highly encourage you guys, just even for entertainment. I mean, DFS golf is so much fun. And at Fantasy Labs, all this stuff is free right now, so take advantage of it and make sure you leverage those models to build lineups.
Yeah, highly recommended. Go to Fantasy Labs and check out the models there and make your own too. I mean, if you don't trust Peter, make your own, but you should probably trust Peter because he knows what he's doing a lot more than you do. So thanks, Peter. Good luck to you this week. Good luck to everybody else out there. Here's hoping you hit the green.
Good luck, everybody. Thanks, Jason.